much, Mario. Thank you also to Martha from Junior Achievement Mexico. Thank you to my colleague from FEE, Arturo Portillo, who many of you know, and also, and most importantly, to all of you who come from so many states and half a dozen countries from the Junior Achievement Organization. I am deeply honored to be here with you today and to talk about one of my favorite subjects, real heroes. I have many, thank you. I have to tell you something that I don't say to very many audiences, but this one is very special because of what you plan to do in your lives, what you, at this stage of your life, are so keenly interested in, and that is entrepreneurship. I am quite confident when I say that I think from this audience of hundreds of young people, there will come, in the years to come, dozens, if not hundreds, of real heroes, because you are focused on something that is essentially, by its very nature, a heroic venture, value creation, making the world a better place, supplying people with the goods and services that make for happy and healthy and longer lives. You are the people who make things happen. I heard it once said that there are only 3 kinds of people in the whole world. There's a very small group that makes things happen, and then there's a somewhat larger group that watches things happen, and then there's a great majority of people who never know what happened. You're in that first group because as budding future entrepreneurs, you will be solving problems, you will be offering the world the kinds of innovations that make for better and longer lives, and in my belief, that makes you a hero in the making. Now, let me talk a little bit about what a real hero is, because different people may have different conceptions of what a hero is. I think we all have a very positive view, right? I think regardless of your definition, we probably all would like to see more heroes in the world, not fewer, right? But what exactly is it? What is heroism? What makes a person a real hero? Certainly, if you have an example of, say, a firefighter who rushes back into a burning home and saves a child from the fire, we all would say that person is a hero. That person took a risk and saved a life. And we all wish there were more such people who had that kind of courage. But the kind of person I would say is a real hero is one who experiences not simply 1 or 2 or a few heroic moments in life, but rather who live heroic lives every day. That's the kind of person I think we want more of, and there are many entrepreneurs among them who are conquering diseases, saving lives, solving problems every day of the week. But I wouldn't take anything away from the firefighter, the brave firefighter who rescues a child from a burning home. The kind of hero I'm looking for, however, has something so deep within himself or herself that heroism comes naturally. When circumstances arise, you might not even realize that they had it in them to rise to the occasion and do heroic things. Sometimes they don't even know how they would react in radical or dangerous circumstances. But if they've worked on something I call character previously, if they've improved their character, if they've made that a priority in their lives, there's a far greater chance that when circumstances arise in which they can be a hero, they will be a hero because they have the character from within them to rise to the occasion, and it almost becomes natural to them. That's why I would say that you cannot separate heroism from personal character. Someone who does not care about character, who is, say, chronically dishonest or irresponsible or arrogant or impatient or timid, I would say chances are pretty good they won't rise to the occasion and be heroic when circumstances call for it, but someone who recognizes early, as at your ages, how important personal character is. You can build that wellspring that will serve you well when occasions come upon you to be a hero. What are those qualities of character that are so essential to work on, to give a priority to as you build your lives? This is not in any particular order of priority, but there's certainly, all of these traits are among the most important. One is honesty. Honesty. Can you imagine a hero who's also a chronically dishonest person, who doesn't value truth, who lies, who steals, who prevaricates, cuts corners, who takes advantage of other people by deceiving them? They are not likely to be a hero in any circumstance. So if you want to see more heroes, then I would say start by recognizing the importance in yourself of living an honest life, of being faithful to the truth, of recognizing that truth is of value in and of itself. It isn't simply something, oh yeah, I'm for it whenever it gives some advantage to me. No, I mean when you say, I'm for the truth, even if sometimes it might be painful, because truth is a value in and of itself. If you happen to be a Christian, or perhaps of any of the other major faiths, you know, because they all teach the same thing, that the Creator expects us to be people of truth, not people of lies and deception. So honesty is critically important. It's a value in and of itself. I remember taking letters to Cambodia in 1989, which was a very desperately poor country at the time. And folks back in Michigan told me, Larry, will you send or take these letters for these 4 families who are writing to their loved ones back in Cambodia? Each of the envelopes has money in it, but don't come back with any of the money. If you can't find the families, at least give the money to poor Cambodians, and they were everywhere. I found 3 of the families, but the night before I was to leave, and when I realized that I wasn't going to make it to the village where the 4th family lived, I had to find somebody to trust with this last envelope with a letter and $200 in it. And I felt good about a particular man who had given me a ride in his rickshaw during the week. I knew he was desperately poor, but he smiled. He spoke a few words of English so we could have a conversation. I sensed that this was a good man. You ever get that feeling sometimes, and sometimes the opposite feeling when you're with somebody and you sense something's not right here? But I sensed this guy was a good man, so I gave him that letter, and I said, if you can get it to the family it's intended for, you can keep $50 out of the $200 that's in that envelope. And then I left the country. And of course, what would most people think at that point? Oh, I'll never hear about that again, right? That would be a natural reaction. But about 6 months later, the person who first gave me these letters called me, and she was very excited. She said, Larry, I have a copy of a letter that the family you weren't able to reach sent to their loved ones back here, and I have to read a paragraph to you. And she was very emotional. She said, the letter reads, thank you for the $200. Now, what did that say? That said that that very desperately poor man had a reservoir of character that is incredibly admirable. He could have kept the whole 200. He didn't even keep the 50 I told him he could keep. And I've thought to this day that if somehow by magic I were ever to be in his presence again, and maybe my life depended on him, I would trust him implicitly, because he showed when it really didn't have to be that way. He showed that he had an element of character, and it didn't matter that his name wouldn't be in the headlines or in the lights. He did what he thought was right, which was over the top. Honesty, humility is another important trait. And by humility, I don't mean running yourself down. I mean just recognizing that as much as you may know, there's still a universe of knowledge out there that you don't know. Now, the opposite of that would be a person who goes through life saying, oh, I know everything, or I know more than you, or I can tell you what to do because I know best. I know better than you do about how to run your life. You know, nobody likes to hang around people like that, right? Because that's very demeaning to you. It says, you know, you don't count, that only that person counts. Only that person is important. So if you recognize that there is in the world an endless, infinite amount of knowledge, then you realize, wow, I may be very smart, I may have 5 PhDs to my name, but there's still a universe, an infinity of knowledge I don't know. And that'll be just as true the day I leave as it was the day I was born. So a humble person tends to be introspective. They look to improve themselves. They don't go through life thinking they know so much they can run everybody else's life, plan other people's economies, things like that. No, they try to improve. And by doing that, they probably serve as the best examples of anybody in our midst. Another important trait is responsibility. How many people know someone that you would say is not responsible? Okay, we all, if you think about it, you know someone. What does an irresponsible person look like? An irresponsible person says, even though I made the mistake, it's your fault. I want to blame you. You owe me something just because I exist. It's all your fault, not mine. Well, that's not the adult way to behave. The adult way to behave is to accept responsibility, recognize the mistakes you've made, try to rectify them, learn from them, be a better person because of them. That's what responsibility is, and I think if you think about it for a moment, you'll realize, of course you would want to live in a world where people are more responsible. It would be a much happier world than one in which people are angry and blaming everybody else all the time. Another important trait is courage. We live in a dangerous world, all of us, no matter where we're from. There are people in our midst, in our countries and in other countries, who, if they thought they had the opportunity, would take your stuff, may even take your freedom, may even take your life. And in history, people who love freedom and entrepreneurship and personal independence are always having to step up and defend themselves, speak truth to power. And people who do that at great risk to themselves, I think, are heroes. We need more people like that because we live in a dangerous world. A very timid people, I don't think, will be a free people because someone will run over them in no time at all. There are other important traits that make up character that you'll find in real heroes, but I want to give you some examples of real heroes who possessed most, if not all, of these traits. And I'm hoping that these will be new names that perhaps you haven't heard. How many have heard of Fanny Crosby? A few maybe? Okay. Maybe nobody. Okay, great. This will be new for everyone. I didn't know who she was 15 years ago. I only learned of her just 15 years ago. Fanny Crosby was an American. She was born in 1820, and she lived to 1915. So she had a very long life of 95 years. And here's some important things about her. To this day, she holds the record for having written the words to more songs than any other human being from any place in the world. She wrote almost 9,000 songs, and most of them were hymns to be sung in churches. And all across the world today, on any Sunday service, chances are quite good that lots of people, by perhaps the millions, are still singing songs by Fanny Crosby. That's quite a remarkable achievement. Do you know what else? She also personally came to know more American presidents than any other man or woman in American history. Now, wouldn't you agree, if you actually came to know, either after they served in office or while they were president, if you came to know maybe 5 presidents of any country, That would be remarkable, wouldn't it? To say, I know 5 of them. Guess how many she knew? 21. She knew every American president from John Quincy Adams, whom she met long after he left the White House, all the way through and including Woodrow Wilson, who was president when she died in 1915. Now that tells you, wow, there's something special about this woman that people in high places sought her out, wanted to know her. Well, I didn't tell you yet the most remarkable thing about her. From the age of 6 months, when she was still a baby, Fanny Crosby could not see anything. She was completely blind in both eyes from the age of 6 months. Now, why do I cite Fanny Crosby for you? Because I don't want you to think that a real hero has to be someone who's born to advantage, or has great wealth to begin with, or has something special going for them that other people don't have. Fanny Crosby was born in a poor family, and she was completely blind, and yet she rose to be, by the time of her death, the most admired American woman. Everybody knew who she was. There are stories about she would get in a taxi cab in New York City, and as soon as the cab driver realized who it was, they would break out into tears because her life was such a remarkable example. Oftentimes people would say to her, Miss Crosby, it's so unfortunate that you've never had the power of sight, and yet you've accomplished so much. I'm so sorry you do not have vision. And you know what she would say time and again? You might think, oh, well, maybe she would say, yeah, it's a terrible shame, I'm sorry, but I'd make do with what I have. She would say, I have often thought how much I would miss if God had given me the power of sight. In other words, she thought, I know I'm handicapped, but I'm not going to let that slow me down. We are called as individual and precious human beings to be the best we can be in everything we can do, to use whatever talents we have to leave the world a better place, and she sure did. She was a real hero, and not just for a moment, but throughout her life, a great example that people the world over admired deeply. Another example, this is a man that I actually knew, and his name was Nicholas Winton. How many have heard that name, W-I-N-T-O-N? He's a great example, and if you type in his name into YouTube, you can see clips from a documentary about him. Some of them are very moving. Nicholas Winton. He just died in 2015. He was the oldest person I have ever personally known. When he died in 2015, he was 106 years of age and 2 months. And on his 106th birthday, which I went to in his home near London, England, he was still reciting poetry off the top of his head, which, you know, that's not easy to do at 106. But that's not what made him famous. It's not what made him a hero. Nicholas Winton saved almost 700 mostly Jewish children from the Nazis, 1938, 1939, just before World War II began. The story goes like this. He was a 29-year-old stockbroker in 1938. That was the last full year of peace before World War II broke out. And you might remember from your history, it was a very highly charged, eventful year. Adolf Hitler grabbed Austria in March of 1938. Then he made some noises saying, I want a big chunk of Czechoslovakia. And the world wondered if we would go to war over that. There was a big conference in September of 38 at Munich, Germany, where an agreement was signed. The Western Allies said, okay, go ahead, you can take that part of Czechoslovakia, but don't go any further. And they thought there was peace in our time, as Prime Minister Chamberlain said. But Nicky Winton knew otherwise. He was a 29-year-old, very bright stockbroker, and he knew it was only a matter of time before Hitler marched on the rest of Czechoslovakia and probably even the rest of Europe as well. And of course he did. So he was going on a Christmas vacation in December of 38 when a good friend of his who worked for the British Embassy in Prague, the capital of Czechoslovakia, contacted him and said, "Nicky, don't go to Switzerland, come here to Czechoslovakia. You must see something. I want to show you something." Well, when he got to Prague, what his friend wanted him to see were refugee camps at the beginning of winter, all over and around and near the city of Prague, full of thousands and thousands of mostly Jewish families with their children, some of them babies in their arms, others were teenagers, not far from the age you represent. And they didn't know Nicholas Winton, he didn't know any of them, but what do you suppose happened as he was walking through these refugee camps? Parents came up to him, pleading with him, saying, "Can you take our children? Can you get them to safety?" I mean, can you imagine how desperate a parent has to be to give up their child to a perfect stranger to get them to safety? Because they were saying to him, "No country will recognize that we're in any danger, and yet no country will take us. We can't get out, but maybe if you help, maybe you can get our children to safety." He could have said, "Sorry, I'm supposed to be on vacation. I wish you luck. I'm gone." But he didn't do that because he was a man of character, always has been and would be for the rest of his life. He saw a need, and he knew that somebody had to take action, and it would be him. So without any fanfare, he didn't run to the press, he didn't write a book about it, he just did the right thing. He organized 9 rail transports of children out of Czechoslovakia. He found foster families for them, mostly in Great Britain, where they would be taken care of. And the scenes at the Prague rail station were stunning, of parents giving up their children, not knowing if they would ever see them again, and very few of them would ever see them again. But he organized these transports. 669 children got out to safety through the first part of 1939. He couldn't talk about this for years, decades. When the war came, he joined the Royal Air Force. Afterwards, he met a woman who became his wife, didn't even tell her about what he had done. And the reason is, and I heard this from him personally, although we celebrate the 669 lives he saved, he couldn't remove from his mind the fact that the 9th transport was the biggest of all, 250 children, foster families already having spoken for them, waiting for them in England. And he had them all at the train station on the 1st of September, 1939. That was the day that the war broke out. The Nazis stopped all rail transports, and not one of those 250 children survived. So you can imagine how that would bother him. He was glad he could save what he could, but could never forget the ones that he couldn't save. Well, this story wasn't even widely known until in 1988. His wife is going through the attic, and she finds this box of visa materials, documentation, lists of names, and she says, "What's all this?" And he finally tells her. And then the story it gets around. He becomes the subject of many interviews. He's knighted by Queen Elizabeth for what he did to save so many lives. And every time I would visit him, he was very easy, very accessible. You'd think someone of that famousness, it would be hard to reach. No, I called him one day and said who I was, and I wanted to come and meet him. Could I do that and bring some students with me? And he said, "Sure. Take the train from Paddington Station to Maidenhead and call me when you get there, and I'll pick you up." I mean, he was 94 years of age at that time. Every time we visited, at least one of the students would say something like, "Oh, Mr. Winton, you're such a hero." And he would, what do you think he did? Do you think he would say, "Oh, yeah, I'm hot stuff"? Every time he would say, no, don't call me that. I just did what I could." The man had such incredible humility. He did what he could because he had that character within him that allowed him to rise to the occasion and do heroic things. And he didn't do it for fame, didn't do it for fortune, didn't try to cash in on the story. You could hardly have blamed him if he did. He just did the right thing and didn't care if it gave him any headlines. Wouldn't you love to live in a world of more real heroes like that? Wouldn't you love someday for your children to say, Dad or Mom, thank you for being the hero you've been throughout your life. You've inspired me. You have left the world a better place. I want to be like you. I want to try to accomplish maybe even half as much as you did. Wouldn't that be a wonderful feeling to have your own children say that? I'll leave you one last quick example. I can't tell you a whole lot, but sometimes a hero is in a public office and who does remarkable and unexpected things. Think of Germany, the same place that was the source of the problem in the Winton story. Think of Germany in 1945, lost the war, defeated, devastated, flattened, destruction everywhere, hyperinflation, terrible situation. A lot of people think instinctively that, if your country's really ruined like that, well, then you have to have the government come and rescue you and take the country to the next level. That was not the case in Germany. After all the years of socialism under Hitler, and then even socialism imposed by the occupying powers, in 1945, a man rose through the ranks of German government named Ludwig Erhard, E-R-H-A-R-D, Ludwig Erhard. And when he finally became a finance minister of Germany, there was a great moment when he went on national radio on a Sunday night. And he said to the people of Germany, we are in terrible shape, but we're going to recover, not through the direction of the government. We're going to trust to you, the people, especially those of you who are entrepreneurs, who want to be value creators. And so overnight, he got rid of all the controls, the regulations, he cut taxes, he cut tariffs, he unleashed the German economy. And what happened? Within 10 years, Germany became the wealthiest country in Europe after 10 years of complete defeat and devastation. And they did it through reliance upon a free economy with lots of Germans starting businesses, creating wealth, improving lives. You don't find any such stories where the government did just the opposite and things turned out well. If you want a battered economy to recover, you need to free people. You need to leave them alone. You need to provide for common defense and against peace breakers, but otherwise, get off the backs and out of the way of the heroes in our midst who have entrepreneurial insight. They will solve the problem. They will create the wealth to end the poverty and devastation. Ludwig Erhard, great, real hero, an example of someone in government who had all the temptations to be the big man in charge and tell everybody what to do, but who said, I don't know, I can't do that. I can't run your life. We're going to leave that to you, and you're going to work your magic. And that's exactly what happened. So let me tell you in summary that each and every one of you has it within you. You've already got a good start on this because you're devoted to entrepreneurship. You have it within you to leave the world a profoundly better place by the things you accomplish, the wealth you create, the problems that you solve, the innovations that you pioneer in the coming years. I hope you will never lose sight of that, because if you don't, you will be amazed at what you can accomplish. People will talk about you for years after you're gone. Your children will be deeply appreciative of the high character that you maintained, and your country will thank you. Thank you, future real heroes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Larry, for your talk and for your conference. We do have some 10 minutes for questions, if that's okay for you.
Yes.
So, yeah, we do have questions in the audience. So, please, I think we're going to have time for a couple questions, too. Ahí está una pregunta, por favor, justamente ahí en el centro del auditorio. Por favor, pregunta también, igual, nombre, por favor, delegación, y la pregunta para Larry, por favor.
Hi, I'm Valeria from Team 16. It's a pleasure to meet you and welcome Mexico.
Thank you.
The question I wanted to ask you is, what's the hardest thing that a hero have to do?
Thank you. What is the hardest thing that a hero has to do? I would have to say the hardest thing would be to avoid temptation. When you think about it, everybody's life every day is full of temptations, right? Temptations to cut corners, to maybe deceive a little bit, not stick with the truth, take an advantage of someone. You know, we have those temptations. We're human, so we have those temptations. A hero is one who recognizes that that's just not right, and I don't want to do that because my character means something to me. In fact, if you lose your character, what have you got left? Maybe some earthly riches, but you can't take that with you. And probably there won't be any rewards for it once you're gone. And you can't take it with you, as I say. So I think that's to avoid temptation. And you may find, if you act heroically, that the temptations will come hot and heavy all the time, temptations. But a good, solid, real hero is one who says, I want to do what's right, even if I'm tempted to do something wrong. So resist temptation. Build your character. You will never regret it.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there it goes our final question for today, please. Go ahead. Your question for Larry, please.
I'm Alejandra. No puedo hablar.
Take your time.
No puede hablar.
Okay, she can talk because she started screaming so loud yesterday, so she cannot speak. There you go. Jime, please, your question for Larry. Última pregunta, por favor. Última pregunta.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Jimena from Guatemala. And I wanted to ask you, what books do you recommend to read to work our hero skills?
Okay, thank you. What books to read to work on your character to become a better real hero? Well, there's a classic in the United States. I think it has sold very well all over the world that I still recommend. It's probably 80 years old now. It's by Dale Carnegie, and it's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's full of great advice about how to treat other people so they will respect you, so that they'll seek you out and want to know more of what you know. And a more recent book is by a female author named Olivia Cabani, spelled C-A-B-A-N-E, and it's entitled The Charisma Myth. The Charisma Myth. We all know what charisma is, and we all wish we had it. Some do, some don't. But in this book, the author says, you're mistaken if you think you can't develop charisma. You know, some people think, oh, you either have it or you don't. But in this book, she says, no. You can actually develop it. You can make yourself a more appealing person, a person of greater influence and impact by working on these traits and abilities from within, making yourself a better person. That's a fantastic book. I remember every page, I think I marked something because it was a gem of great advice.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Once again,
thank you
all. Appreciate it.
Okay, Larry, could you please hold on a minute? Larry, could you please hold on a minute? Please. Stay here, please. Llamamos en este momento para entregar el reconocimiento a Larry Reed en nombre de todo el FIE 2023, a Mariana Escalante de Baja California y a Juan Montini de Argentina. Por favor, si en este momento nos pueden ayudar a entregarle el reconocimiento. In behalf of the entire FIE, we want to thank you. We appreciate so much your conference, Larry. Thank you very much. Here comes Juan Montini from Argentina, and Mariana Escalante de Baja California. So, can you walk please to the center? Y bueno, ahí estamos tomándonos la fotografía oficial. Bueno. De alguna manera muy representativa esta imagen, esta fotografía. Queremos recordar. Please stay here, just a little bit, stay here a little longer. Queremos también agradecerle porque aquí tenemos a Juan Montini de Argentina. Juan Montini de Argentina creo que se merece un aplauso porque ayer fue uno de los participantes hablando de las botellas de agua que justamente nos ayudó a recoger más de 20 botellas de agua tiradas en el y no era su labor. Gracias, Juan. Y queremos aprovechar muy rápido, si suben aquí por favor y tomarse foto con Larry, a Arad Huerta, Juan Andrés Lara y Demian Romero, por favor, si vienen aquí al frente. Van a decir ustedes qué hicieron Arad Huerta, Juan Andrés Lara y Demian Romero. Suban rápido, vengan por favor, Arad. Ven, Juan Andrés, rápido, por favor. Rápido. Estos tres cracks, estos tres juniors, al igual que Juan, ayer, durante la última parte de la carrera extrema, cuando el chavo de Olimpiadas Especiales digamos, se empezó a sentir muy mal, estos tres caballeros, Juan, Demian y Arad, estuvieron permanentemente pegados con él, levantándole las piernas más de 15 minutos hasta que llegaba la doctora. Un bajo perfil, pero un altísimo impacto. Un aplauso, por favor, para ellos, porque hablamos justamente de héroes. Gracias, Demian. Gracias, Juan Andrés. Gracias, Arad. Y bueno, con Larry, Heroes. Hoy hablamos de héroes, pues aquí tenemos a héroes también en el escenario. Muchísimas gracias. Un aplauso. Gracias.